Hello everyone, quick announcement. Sleep and Relax ASMR has partnered with X Tingles to release 2 exclusive NFTs available either by auction or sale on X Tingles platform. X Tingles is the premier marketplace for ASMR digital art and collectibles, which you can collect, sell, and trade. Collecting pieces means you'll be a pioneer in this emerging technology, as well as support this podcast. In practical terms, you'll be able to collect and trade digital art that combines audio and visual into one. So for more information, you can visit xtingles.com. That's xtingles.com. Or you can email me at hello@sleepandrelaxasmr.com if you have any questions or comments. Link in the description.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Sleep and Relax ASMR. And welcome to another edition of the ASMR Critic. If this is your first time listening to the series, well, welcome. Thanks for joining along. And no, there is no need to listen to this in sequential order. The ASMR Critic is a series where I give my opinion and review on an artist or director's work or portfolio. I've done episodes on Hilma af Klint, as well as Martin Scorsese, Jackson Pollock, just to name a few. This episode we are going to dig into the works of Quentin Tarantino, and of course there are a ton of options, but I've only seen a handful of Tarantino films. Not included in this episode will be films such as Reservoir Dogs, Kill Bill, Jackie Brown, From Dusk Till Dawn, True Romance, etc., etc. Films that will be included in this episode are Pulp Fiction, Sin City, which you'll see why, Inglourious Basterds, Django Unchained, The Hateful Eight, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. So, I'd like to work this episode in date of release, so we shall begin with Pulp Fiction. Pulp Fiction is a 1994 American crime film written and directed by Quentin Tarantino, who conceived it with Roger Avary, starring John Travolta, Samuel L. Jackson, Bruce Willis, Tim Roth, Ving Rhames, and Uma Thurman. It tells several stories of criminal Los Angeles. The title refers to the pulp magazines and hard-boiled crime novels popular during the mid-20th century, known for their graphic violence and punchy dialogue. Pulp Fiction is widely regarded as Tarantino's masterpiece, with particular praise for its screenwriting. The self-reflexivity, unconventional structure, and extensive homage have led critics to describe it as a touchstone of postmodern film. I've heard cornerstone, never heard of the use of a touchstone to describe anything. It is often considered a cultural watershed influencing movies and other media that adopted elements of its style. Can you tell that I copy-pasted some of this text a little bit too small? In 2008, Entertainment Weekly named it the best film since 1983, and it has appeared on many critics' lists of the greatest films ever made. So, I'll get on to my commentary. Just like to give some of the background. So, when I first saw Pulp Fiction, I actually was not impressed. I think that's largely because of the kind of fame and grandeur and popularity that I knew about it. And my aunt was giving me, all this hype about the film. So me being a Nancy teenager, thinking I was too cool, thinking I was smarter than everyone else in the room, I wanted to reject the film as being as thoughtful and entertaining as it was. But then as I grew up a bit, I rewatched it, and I really appreciated the movie on various levels. First off, the film has produced moments that are forever glorified and cemented in pop culture. Whether it be things like Say What Again, Mother Effer, or Royale with Cheese. And, of course, the best line is given by Samuel L. Jackson during the tense moment in the diner. He quotes Ezekiel 25:17. The path of the righteous man is beset on all sides by the inequities of the selfish and the tyranny of the evil men. Blessed is he who in the name of charity and goodwill shepherds the weak through the valley of darkness, for he is truly his brother's keeper and the finder of lost children. And I will strike down upon thee with great vengeance and furious anger those who attempt to poison and destroy my brothers, and you will know my name is the Lord when I lay my vengeance upon thee. I mean, come on. I obviously didn't deliver the line with the same emotion. I mean, I can't, number one, because I'm not a top-level actor. But number two, this is a sleep-related podcast. If I start yelling these quotes and lines, it's probably not going to be very conducive to a good night's rest. But I think either way, it's, as I say that, as I read that, and you've seen the film, I think the vast majority of us will kind of play Samuel Jackson saying that in the diner. We can recall exactly how he hit every word, every note of that scene. So the fact that Pulp Fiction is kind of cemented in its place in pop culture, a film that was, released in the 80s, and we still talk about it, that really speaks to me on one level. Secondly, there's this wild level of entertainment. It has funny moments, it has tense moments, it has feel-good moments, moments of redemption. It has basically two totally different stories being told at the same time that you get pulled back and forth between. It has a shock factor, like the whole thing with Marcellus and the Gimp. And, well, if you haven't watched the movie, then you'll have to see what I mean. Lastly, I think it's what, as a casual viewer, I love about movies, which is you go to a place and you feel absorbed in what you watch, and it's entertaining and tense, and you run this entire series of emotion, and you get caught up in the time. What my teenage self couldn't appreciate was to just enjoy what was in front of me at the time. I was getting too caught up in, these are two different stories. Where is this leading to? What is really who are the good guys? Who are the bad guys? What's the conclusion? What do I make of this? And if you go into Pulp Fiction and you just go along for the ride, which, being older, I've rewatched it, like I said, and, I can just be caught up in the moment. Enjoy every beat, every scene, every line, without getting too worried about, this doesn't look like other movies, this doesn't feel like other movies, it doesn't sound like other movies. It's because it's not like every other movie. That's partially what makes it such a great film. So I will give Pulp Fiction an 8 out of 10. Up next, we have Sin City, 2005. Sin City was not directed by Tarantino, but he is credited with a special guest director credit. And Sin City holds a special place in my heart for no real reason, so I wanted to cover it briefly. Sin City is a 2005 American crime anthology film, written, produced, directed by Robert Rodriguez and Frank Miller, based on Miller's graphic novel of the same name. The film stars an ensemble cast led by Jessica Alba, Benicio del Toro, Brittany Murphy, Clive Owen, Mickey Rourke, Bruce Willis, and Elijah Wood. Sin City opened to wide critical and commercial success, gathering particular recognition for the film's unique color processing, which rendered most of the film in black and white while retaining or adding colors for selected objects. So here's my commentary on Sin City, my critique. I remember watching this film when I was a teenager, and it had the opposite effect on me that Pulp Fiction had when I first watched it. And for some reason, I really loved Sin City the first time. I loved Jessica Alba dancing in black and white. I loved the seriousness and the comic book-like qualities of it. In reality, when I rewatch it, I am less convinced it's as good as I thought it was, but it's still very entertaining. You know, it's an interesting story. It's very dark if you're into that type of stuff. And, it's a cast of some real big names at that time and still today. Jessica Alba, Benicio del Toro, Brittany Murphy, Clive Owen, Mickey Rourke, Bruce Willis, Elijah Woods, Rosario Dawson was in there as well. So it's a lot of actors that, at that time in particular were pretty much on top of their game or about to get to the top of their game or whatever the case may be. It still will always hold a special place in my heart just because I remember, again, you're a teenager, you think you're smarter, and when you find things that really entertain you and you think are really interesting, it gives you a glimpse into the things you really like, the things you really don't like. If you like films, well, what kind of films do you like? And for me, it gave me a very good indication that I like films that are I like films that mimic a certain fantasy. I can appreciate films that are very relatable in terms of everyday life, or a rom-com even can be entertaining from time to time. But I really enjoy films, and this really cemented it for me, films that feel like something sort of relatable, but with totally fantastic and kind of mysterious and fantasy-like qualities. It's no different why, everyone likes the Harry Potter films for the most part. But I really enjoy Harry Potter because they look like people, they have some of the same cars, the same buildings, normal things that you can relate to in a normal everyday life. But there's also this element where it's like, this is a totally different world. Sin City, again, based on the way it's filmed, the way it's presented, the characters, some of the let's call it effects, you kind of are in the, I felt like I was in a comic book, and I remember thinking about that while watching, and really kind of gave me an idea of the things I like. So anyway, I'll give it a 6.5 out of 10, verging on a 7, but I think 7 would be a little too high, because I think it's very entertaining. I think it holds a sentimental place for me, but it's not a great film in my opinion, so I'll give it a 6.5. Next up, we have Inglourious Basterds. Inglourious Basterds is a 2009 war film written and directed by Quentin Tarantino, starring Brad Pitt, Christoph Waltz, Michael Fassbender, Eli Roth, Diane Kruger, Daniel Bruhl, Till Schweiger, and Melanie Laurent. The film tells an alternate history story of two plots to assassinate Nazi Germany's leadership, one planned by Shoshana Dreyfus Laurent, a young French-Jewish cinema proprietor, and the other by a team of Jewish American soldiers led by First Lieutenant Aldo Rain, played by Brad Pitt. Christoph Waltz co-stars as Hans Landa, an SS colonel tracking down Rain's group and who is connected to Shoshana's past. The film's title was inspired by Italian director Enzo Castellari's Macaroni Combat, The Inglourious Basterds, a film in 1978. A couple more little tidbits before I give you my opinion on Inglourious Basterds. Inglourious Basterds grossed over $321 million in theaters worldwide, making it Tarantino's highest grossing film at the time, until surpassed by Django Unchained in 2012 and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, two films that I will discuss next, actually. The film, of course, received widespread acclaim and received multiple awards and nominations, among them 8 Academy Award nominations, including Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Original Screenplay. I really loved Inglourious Basterds the first time I watched it, the second time I watched it, the third time, every time. I thought Brad Pitt was very good, although kind of a bit over the top with the accent, but Brad Pitt gets like that from time to time. Like an overly serious Brad Pitt kind of has the same pauses and hits in the way he'll deliver lines. Can be distracting, but overall, in most cases, he was a net positive in the film. Unbelievable performance, and it's what really put Waltz on the map, I think, for casual cinema and film fans. His ability to be charismatic, funny, and yet devastatingly fearsome and frightful is so difficult, and he is just perfect. You know, there's this idea that the best actors are those that do simple things that you don't even realize they're acting, and that is Christoph Waltz. Dialogue in the film is grade A. There are plenty of scenes, in particular the opening scene, where it's a dialogue with so much at stake, but from the very beginning you're gripping onto your seat, experiencing a roller coaster of emotions. You know, the opening scene it's like one of the most unbelievable openings to any movie. You know, the entry of Colonel Hans Landa, he visits a farmer, and I really don't want to give too much away in the event that you haven't seen it, but seriously, rewatch the opening scene of Inglourious Basterds, even just on YouTube, and enjoy how great it is in every way. You know, the way he walks into the farmer's home, the slow, methodical beat of every kind of bit of dialogue that's taking place. You can cut the tension with a knife, and it's just two people talking. I think if another director tries this, if he or she tries to execute the same idea, I think the vast majority of directors get this to fall flat. But of course, it's Tarantino. It's Christoph Waltz. I don't know the name of the French actor who played the farmer, but he was also everyone is great in this movie. But you know, when a movie is able to drag you in, force you into a scene or a time and place, and it's able to do so in the most simple ways, right? Whether it be the setting, the small details, the audio, the camera work, it's what takes it above a normal movie and transcends into a higher form of entertainment, at least for, again, a very casual movie fan and viewer like myself. The absolute best scene, and one of the best scenes I've ever seen in my life, is a couple of characters are doing a covert mission at a Nazi bar, and it wasn't supposed to be a very tense experience, but then, you know, it ended up being anyway, I'm going to try to paraphrase it. Lieutenant Hickox, played by Michael Fassbender, fantastic, accompanied by Lieutenant Wiki and Hugo Stieglitz. You know, they were supposed to basically rendezvous with the German actress double agent Bridget von Hammersmark at a small French tavern. And when they show up, it's actually filled with German military because of the celebration of one of the German privates becoming a new father. And, they're drunk and they're trying to have a good time. And obviously, as a viewer, you're going into the scene with the expectation that it's supposed to be a very calm, very, very easy kind of normal day. It's as simple as going to a bar. And then, of course, again, this ends up being extremely tense. Anyway, the scene basically involves a game of cards, some witty dialogue, some small details that upon first view you probably don't catch. And it's what makes a film. It's so good. I really don't want to give away too many details because those that have seen it, I think, will recall the scene in particular and know exactly what I mean about how good it is and how simple the idea is. It doesn't require effects. It doesn't require a ton of action. It doesn't require something crazy. It just requires, good acting, good dialogue, good writing, good framing, good camera work. And, it's Tarantino, so what else is there to say? He's going to just do a great job. I could go on and on about Inglourious Basterds, but I will give it a 9 out of 10. If you were to ask me on a different day, maybe I'll give it 10 out of 10. Well, actually, just saying that out loud is kind of silly. I'll give it a 10 out of 10. I think for me, it might be my favorite Tarantino film. Up next, we move to Django Unchained. Django Unchained is a 2012 American revisionist western written and directed by Quentin Tarantino, starring Jamie Foxx, Christoph Waltz, Leonardo DiCaprio, Kerry Washington, and Samuel L. Jackson. It is a highly stylized tribute to spaghetti westerns, using an obvious revisionist history, in particular the 1966 Italian film Django by Sergio Corbucci, who starred Franco Nero as a cameo appearance. Django Unchained grossed $162.8 million in the US and Canada and $262.6 million in other territories for a worldwide total of $425 million against a production budget of $100 million. So, a success, of course, by any standard. So, here, well, on Rotten Tomatoes, the film holds an approval rating of 87% based on 282 reviews. The website's critical consensus reads, bold, bloody, and stylistically daring. Django Unchained is another masterpiece from Quentin Tarantino. Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times gave the film 4 stars out of 4 and said, quote, "The film offers one sensational sequence after another, all set around these two intriguing characters who seem opposites but share pragmatic financial and personal issues. Had I not been prevented from seeing it sooner because of an injury, this would have been on my year's best films list." And I include, end quote. I include the commentary above because it rings very true. It's very bold, it's very in your face. And you don't forget Django Unchained the moment you finish it. It's a movie that lingers with you and you think of it beyond the time it finishes. And I think that's a great testament to its entertainment value and quality. And while I don't love Django as much as I did Inglourious Basterds, I think it is still great in many ways. Right? Jamie Foxx is great. That's usually the case. Leo DiCaprio is great. Christoph Waltz, it's going to do a great job. It's in some ways it possesses some of the same great qualities of Inglourious Basterds in that there is some excellent dialogue to be expected, but there's overall more kind of action and kind of like fantastical action that's almost like comedic in some cases. So I wouldn't say it's as good as Inglourious Basterds by any stretch, but again, it's entertainment value and sticking power in terms of, again, it's not a movie that once it's over you forget about. You can kind of recall scenes very clearly, certain moments very clearly. So I will give Django a 7 out of 10. Up next, we have The Hateful Eight. The Hateful Eight is a 2015 American Western thriller written and directed by Quentin Tarantino. The film stars Samuel L. Jackson, Kurt Russell, Jennifer Jason Leigh, Walton Goggins, Demian Bichir, Tim Roth, Michael Madsen, and Bruce Dern as 8 strangers who seek refuge from a blizzard in a stagecoach stopover sometime after the American Civil War. I'm going to include a couple other things here. The film grossed $155.8 million against a $45 million budget. Another success, of course, in that sense. So here's like a more in-depth overview. Several years after the Civil War, a stagecoach rides through a cold Wyoming landscape. The passengers, bounty hunter John Ruth and his fugitive Daisy Domergue, race towards the town of Red Rock, where Ruth, known in these parts as the Hangman, will bring Domergue to justice. Along the road, they encounter 2 strangers, Major Marquise Warren and Chris Mannix. Losing their lead on the blizzard, the group seeks refuge at Minnie's Haberdashery, a stagecoach stopover on a mountain pass. As the storm overtakes the mountainside stopover, our 4 travelers and 4 strangers come to learn they may not make it to Red Rock after all. My commentary. The Hateful Eight is a movie that immediately when I saw the trailer for, I was begging to see. It's just one of those movies I knew I was going to enjoy. It's a Tarantino film, so you've got some of the best in the business. Samuel Jackson, Kurt Russell, Tim Roth, Walton Goggins, which I wasn't that familiar with prior to the film, but while watching and since watching, I've really enjoyed his work. I'll get to that in a second. The list goes on, and it's just an ensemble of characters that you're going to get great acting and great character development, because Tarantino always delivers films with great dialogue, very well defined characters, and he's able to get his actors, that he knows will deliver exactly the type of character that he wants. Again, my favorite of the group was Walton Goggins. I didn't know him before the film, but I've seen him now on Vice Principals, The Righteous Gemstones. He's got this crazy range, and he can be funny, he can be serious, he can display emotion in a very obvious way. He never seems out of place in anything he does, and I think he is great in The Hateful Eight. There's a review that I included here in my commentary, which is The Hateful Eight is, quote, a high-wire thriller full of masterfully executed twists, captivating dialogue, and a wildly entertaining narrative that gallops along at a pace to make 3 hours evaporate in an instant, end quote. And then Peter Bradshaw wrote, it's intimate yet somehow weirdly colossal, once again releasing Tarantino's own kind of unwholesome, crazy, funny, violent nitrous oxide into the cinema auditorium for us to inhale. It's the last bit that really sticks with me, And it's exactly what I felt was great about the film. It is insanely intimate, and the entire film takes place in one setting. And yet, it feels vast, it feels rich, it feels like a real place. It's a simple setting, complex characters, great dialogue. It makes it for the type of film that I really enjoy the most. Again, it has the same effect that Sin City had on me, which is it's relatable, and yet because of the funny quality of it, the kind of historical piece, it's like a kind of period piece almost. It feels like a fantasy. It feels like a tall tale being told to you by Tarantino, and you're just enjoying hearing about it. And you're wondering, well, is this really how it went? It doesn't really have one scene that I think, I will love in cinematic glory, and, at least not on the top of my head, but the entire film, despite being pretty long, is, if you like this kind of period piece, if you like good dialogue, good setting, every little detail being right about delivering the story, then I think you'll enjoy it. And I give it an 8 out of 10. Fittingly, being that it's the Hateful Eight. And now we reach the final film of this ASMR Critic edition, which is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is a 2019 comedy drama film written and directed by Quentin Tarantino, produced by Columbia Pictures. It features a large ensemble cast led by Leonardo DiCaprio, Brad Pitt, and Margot Robbie. Set in 1969 Los Angeles, the film follows an actor and a stunt double as they navigate the changing film industry, and features multiple storylines in a modern fairy tale tribute to the final moments of Hollywood's golden age. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood premiered at Cannes Film Festival on May 21st, 2019, and was theatrically released in the U.S. July 26, 2019. The film has grossed $374 million worldwide and received praise from critics for Tarantino's screenplay, directing, acting, cinematography, costume design, everything, you name it. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is a film that, if you ask me to tell you exactly what it's about, even though that little snippet is true, an actor and a stuntman kind of trying to find their place in Hollywood during the end of its golden age, you'd have to really watch it to appreciate it, for sure. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood does something exceptionally well, and something that Tarantino pulls off so effectively in basically every other film reviewed this episode, and that is, this movie feels like a real place in real time. I think for most of us, we expect a good movie to have that going on, but it's much more difficult than we can appreciate, I think. This felt like real people, real scenes, real places, real stories, and that's the beauty of a film that you see in this form of entertainment. DiCaprio's great in this movie. Like always, he plays a role convincingly, and he does look like a tormented actor struggling to move past his fame from previous roles, but no longer, those roles no longer exist, or they just totally pass him by. Brad Pitt, great as always, had some of the usual Brad Pitt stuff where he delivers lines and pauses in the same way sometimes, but he's great nonetheless. Margot Robbie pretty much just smiles and remains silent the entire film, and yet she is so charismatic and magnetic, and she's wonderful. It's a really interesting film because I think when you talk about what is the plot of the film, what's the point, it's not easy to say. Like I mentioned, this movie is about A and B. No, it's basically Tarantino giving us a glimpse into old Hollywood, the dying breed of macho male-centric roles and stars, and pop culture revisionist history take on the Sharon Tate murder, which you'd have to watch to really see what I'm getting at. It is slow at times, but I like the ride in general. I didn't feel bored. I felt very curious to know where every scene was leading to. And I think if you've watched it or you're going to watch it, I think you'll feel the same way. You're stuck kind of wondering what is going to be, what's the next scene, where are we getting to? That's part of the fun. Just enjoy the ride. So overall, I really enjoyed Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and I give it a rating of 8 out of 10. So there you have it. I have critiqued and given my nonsensical rambles about some of Tarantino's biggest and best films. I'm curious to know what your opinions are. What are some other Tarantino films I should check out? What are some other directors or artists I should check out? You can always get in touch with me at hello@sleepandrelaxasmr.com. That's all for this episode. Thanks as always for listening, and take care.